The Mavs just made their first NBA Finals since Dirk Nowitzki. We can talk about Luka, which I already did in my most recent video. We can talk about Kyrie, which I'll probably be doing soon. But what about the 20-year-old rookie who's completely transformed the dynamic of this roster? Dereck Lively is a rare breed of athlete. Standing 7'1", he's one of the tallest players in the NBA. For reference, he's listed as being taller than guys like Joel Embiid or Mitchell Robinson, has 3 inches on his own teammate Daniel Gafford. Really, the most comparable physical makeup for him is probably Rudy Gobert, but you'd never know it by the way he moves. He's really quick on his feet. Here you can compare his mobility to another 7-footer in Zubats, just leaving him in the dust on a backdoor cut. And not only does he have some agility on the floor, he's very explosive vertically, capable of getting above the rim for some truly impressive finishes. This has of course turned him into a big-time lob threat. So on a team with Kyrie and Luka, that means lots of easy points. You'll often see him hang around the dunker spot as a vertical spacer, and as long as the ball is thrown anywhere near the rim, there's a pretty good chance he's throwing it down. Here's one where Luka isolates from up top, beats his man off the dribble, and when he lobs it up, George actually thinks it's a floater and tries to box out. Not quite. It isn't as simple as just sitting in one spot and waiting for a pass though. One thing you really like to see with Lively as a rookie is he's already showing that he knows how to seal off the low man in these spots, making it a much easier catch and finish. And oftentimes, the only way to prevent a free 2 points after he touches the ball is to send him to the line. In these playoffs, he's attempting just under 6 free throws every 75 possessions, and although he isn't a good free throw shooter by any means, they can bring value such as putting other bigs in foul trouble, getting his team in the bonus, or maybe even just getting 1 point on the board that otherwise wouldn't be there. There's really only one gripe I have with Lively as a big in the dunker spot, and that's on plays like this where his man helps on the ball before turning to recover and there's a little bit of space in between them. Rarely ever will you see him use a power dribble, and that's something that could take his interior scoring to another level. With that said, his game is still incredibly simple. Pretty much every single one of his points is either an assisted layup, dunk, or free throw. No, he's not bringing the versatility of a stretch 5 or a ball handling initiator or even a post-up guy who can use the mid-range, but he's incredibly efficient in his role, and it's precisely what the Mavs have needed next to Luka for years. That's because most of their offense starts with spread pick and roll, and who better than a mobile 7-footer with a huge lob radius to maximize that approach. After so many reps, he's also gotten great at recognizing coverages and slipping the screen accordingly, this time sealing off position in the paint and drawing one of those intentional fouls only to finish anyways. You'll oftentimes see him go to set a screen, but instead of making contact, he'll just roll into open space early, and from there he can attack out of the short roll. This is really important because both Luka and Kyrie very commonly draw aggressive coverages, so in many ways it's imperative that the roller be capable of maximizing these situations. For a rookie who primarily finishes plays at the rim, the flashes have been awesome. He's not much of an on-ball scorer, but when given space to attack, he'll use his length to create an angle. But even more importantly, if he catches and sees an open shooter, he's quick to move the ball, serving as a sort of connector for the offense. These are very basic and standard passes, but they keep the defense in rotation. This one leaves Washington with a driving lane while Lively hangs around the basket for a lob. However, he is still pretty flawed. For one, he's not always decisive with what he wants to do, and that can lead to some awkward possessions like this offensive foul. The bigger problem though is that he can't always take advantage of mismatches. When 2 go to Kyrie and Isaiah Joe picks up Lively on the block, that should either be a bucket or free throws every single time. The drawback of being such a fluid and explosive 7-footer is that he doesn't have the sturdiest frame, which I think hurts him in these spots as he can't be as forceful as you'd like. Although with a few off seasons, I definitely expect both his balance and lower body strength to improve, and I'm curious to see how he can incorporate this jump hook into his game a bit more. For the most part, he doesn't really have much of a post game though, and that's why he sort of relies on those elite ball handlers to create opportunities for him. But the key is that if he can get really good at extending advantages off of those guys through the short roll, defenses really won't have an answer for that pick and roll game, not that they do anyways. In general, I think Lively's got a decent bit to offer as a passer. Every now and then, they'll have him set up action from the high post, and while that usually means a dribble handoff, he can make some finds. I also like that he's a quick decision maker, especially in the middle of the floor. He's always looking to move the ball, this time on a give and go with Luka. And that's turned him into a pretty decent connector, just making the right reads to take advantage of a rotating defense, and on this one, Exum misses the three, but he's right there for an offensive rebound. Speaking of which, that's another way for him to bring value on offense. In the playoffs, he's averaging about 4.5 offensive rebounds every 75 possessions, a mark that would put him near the very top of the league. It's the size, it's the verticality, it's his positioning, and second chance opportunities have become more and more of a focus for offenses looking to gain an edge in such an efficient era of basketball. If you remember, this is how he took over the fourth quarter of that closeout Game 6 against OKC. When Chet helps on a drive, nobody's in position to stop him on the follow. But even when Chet is there and appears to have him boxed out, he's able to tip the ball to himself before going back up and drawing a foul. And then we saw another crucial offensive rebound in Game 1 against the Wolves. Down 4 and needing a score, he grabs one in a packed paint, kicks it back out to Luka, and from there the scoring champ can play one-on-one as he steps back for a triple. All that's to say, while his role is simple and doesn't demand much, there are definitely ways for him to bring a big impact. You already have the crazy athleticism that allows him to run the floor, get above the rim, and finish with the trees as one of the tallest players in the NBA, and he pairs that with great instincts for when and where to position himself on the floor. That's already turned him into a valuable play finisher, and as he continues to improve as a short roll decision maker with more reps, I expect him to become one of the best pick and roll partners in the game. I think learning how to play with power is the next step. We'll probably see him put on some lower body strength, which will help him more effectively punish mismatches, and as I mentioned, I'd like to see some use of the power dribble. But as it stands right now, if you asked me to build an ideal rookie to play next to Luka, it'd be pretty damn close to what Lively is right now. And even more intriguing is that you could argue it's his defensive ceiling that's worthy of the most buzz. As an athletic, lengthy 7-footer, it's pretty standard that most of his value comes from his ability to protect the rim. He's got really good timing as a shot blocker. On this one, you can see how he waits for the perfect moment to go vertical and send away a layup. Here's another example. With a second on the shot clock, the Clippers go to a lob on the inbound. That's just perfect timing. And like I keep saying, he's so explosive vertically that even when he's late to jump or an attacker goes high, he can still get a hand on the ball. He pairs this ability to block shots with great instincts as a helper. Here he picks up Shea on a drive and forces a kick out, but he stays in position so that when Dort beats a closeout, he's there once again, where he targets the ball with his offhand. Typically, positioning is one of those things that rookie shot blockers struggle with, but I'd argue it's actually a strength for Lively, and when it all comes together, we're already talking about a well above average paint defender. This season, he defended 340 shots within 6 feet of the basket, and on those attempts, players shot more than 5% below their typical average. That's a good mark, but through 16 games of the playoffs, it's been taken to another level. The sample is a lot smaller, only 75 attempts, but a 20% drop off in efficiency, and that's been a huge key for the Mavs defense throughout this run. Against OKC, they had him roaming off of one of their weaker shooters, whether that's Giddey, Dort, Wiggins, and he operated as a sort of free safety to shut off the paint. In some games against the Wolves, we saw the same thing whenever Kyle Anderson was on the floor, just letting him shoot from the corner. And another thing that's been prominent for the team has been their use of zone. That's not only unlocked by Lively's ability to protect the middle, but also how his mobility allows him to cover ground. The combination of size, positioning, and mobility really stands out whenever he's defending the pick and roll. He's more of a traditional drop big than anything else, and that's a tough coverage to execute, so he'll have his rookie mistakes. Sometimes he can drop too aggressively, leaving the ball handler with a ton of space to pretty much do whatever they want, and occasionally you'll see him be indecisive. On this one, he doesn't know whether to play the ball or the pop, gets stuck in between, and ends up fouling Shea. However, what I really like about his drop defense is that he's capable of bringing coverage up near the level of the screen, which makes a huge difference. His positioning on this one is so perfect that it completely mitigates the advantage altogether. Then when Luka gets beat on a closeout, he's right there to stop a drive and steal a dump-off pass. On this one, George tries to attack him in the high drop, and he moves his feet to stay in front of the ball, just completely stonewalling that drive to continue protecting the paint. With that said, I wouldn't say he's quite mobile enough to be a true switch big. He'll string together some good possessions when he has to defend in space, whether that's against a perimeter-oriented big or when forced to match up with a guard, but he's got one major limitation: the mobility of his hips. He doesn't struggle with side-to-side movement, rather when he's forced to change directions or turn his body. That's when quicker guys can easily get the step, and why you'd much rather keep him near the basket. I'm not sure how easy this is to improve or develop. It's important to note that this was probably Gobert's biggest weakness back in the mid-2010s, and he's definitely gotten to a point where he can execute different coverages, so that bodes well. And like I said, it's not as if Lively's a total liability out there. If a switch is absolutely necessary, you aren't panicking to see him on the perimeter. And when you account for everything he does around the paint, from his positioning to his rotations to his shot blocking, we're talking about a guy who I would certainly expect to get some all-defensive buzz in just a few years' time. As for his impact right now, well, it's rare to see from a first-year player. How many rookies can you think of in the last 10 years that have played a role on a championship-level team? Once you've got an answer, how many of those can you say were arguably their team's third most impactful player? That's what we're talking about with Lively. Throughout the run, Dallas's rotation has been a sort of tag team with Lively and Gafford. Lively comes off the bench, and depending on how each plays throughout the course of the game is probably who's gonna close. Here's the thing, their minutes have been noticeably different. With Gafford on the floor, the Mavs have had a -3 net rating, losing those minutes. With Lively on the floor, they've had a +15 net rating, which isn't just good, it's remarkable. Actually, it's the highest on-court net rating of any player in the playoffs. I think there are a few things going on here. First, it's a small sample for any sort of plus-minus data, so it's definitely prone to noise and probably not indicative of how truly valuable each big man is. Second, I think Lively has a few skills in his game that give the team another layer, most importantly how much better he is in the short roll. That's why if you look at the overall plus-minus leaders from the playoffs, he's actually been second on the Mavs despite playing just 22 minutes a game. You've got 3 Celtics, Kyrie Irving, then Lively at number 5. The athletic finishing, quick decision making, rebounding, and paint protection have already made him an incredibly valuable big in a playoff setting, and he's just 20 years old. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Lively. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.